McCuistion, for over 28 years talking about things that matter with people who care. Production of McCuistion is made possible in part by individual viewers, supporters of the Foundation for Responsible Television, the University of Texas at Dallas, creating the future.
Now, I bet you're like I am, overwhelmed by emails that either clog up my folder, waste my time, or are very important, but I can't find time to properly respond. Does that sound familiar? Well, if it does, you're in for a treat. Let's meet Diana Boer, whose new book is entitled Faster, Fewer, Better Emails. Diana, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Dennis.
I want to tell that person that you are the author of 48 books. But I was telling somebody the other day, I said, I have a friend of mine who's written 48 books. And they said, well, it's not a big deal. I've probably read 50 or 100 books myself. And I said, I didn't say read 48 books. I said wrote 48 books. And they said, oh my God. And I said, yeah. So some of your titles, 60 foreign language editions, by the way, and you're dealing obviously mostly with the business world, communication. What more can I say? Obviously you found more that you could say. Creating personal presence, and you're very good at teaching people how to present and speak. Communicating with confidence is helpful. And of course, faster, fewer, and better emails. And you've obviously been on Good Morning America and USA Today, Wall Street Journal quotes you, the Bloomberg quotes you. And as I have told you before, the textbook in the communications class that I teach quotes you as well. In fact, the earlier editions quoted you about 3 different times. And so I'm going through these chapters with my students, and I see this, and I said, well, my friend Diana Boer wrote this. And they go, oh my God, you know the woman who's in here? And I said, yeah, I do. Now, in order to write this book, you had to do some research. Tell us what that research was all about, and then tell us some of the most surprising things that that research found out for you.
Well, actually, the research is primary because I deal with email all the time.
Right.
So, as most people do.
Yes.
But actually I did a major study with the University of Northern Colorado. Their social research lab went out and did a scientific sampling because I wanted to know that it was different than just my experience that I was speaking from. So we've got a big research database that supports what I've said in the book. But also, I've been working with clients, you know, in the business world for 30 years, going in and teaching them communication skills, writing and speaking, and hearing their complaints, their gripes, you know, when the CEO says, we have problems, you know, there are all kind of productivity issues, hearing what they say about the email that comes to them and why this functional area doesn't communicate with that functional area. And then just hearing people that are overwhelmed saying, you know, I can't get this approved, I can't get my budget, yeah. I can't get my head count lowered, or, you know, get more people on board to do this project. So I'm hearing it from all different angles. So it's really those 3 buckets of information that I'm writing from.
Right. And when you did that, I think you said you hired actually Josh Packard up Northern Colorado, who's a guy that I talked to, and his dad, of course, is here and does a lot of work for us, et cetera. What were the, I guess, surprising things or unusual things that you found out that are not just anecdotal to you and to me?
Well, they came up with some really good statistics. It was a massive survey. We did, we asked 38 questions, open-ended questions, a lot of them. Some of them were multiple choice, but many of them open-ended to ask what their experience was. And some of the more startling things is how much time people spend in their email. We found that we asked them to estimate how much time, and of course some big studies have been done by some major consulting firms like McKinsey and Adobe, et cetera. And the going rate, even 3 and 4 years ago, was the going estimate was 2 to 2.5 hours a day. But we found from this survey that, I want to make sure I'm quoting this exactly right, 42% of the survey said they spend 3 to 4 hours or more a day on email.
On email.
On email.
Wow.
That's startling.
This is not including social media and gaming and all that
not
stuff.
social media at all.
This
is just email.
Wow.
42% are spending 3 to 4 hours or more on their email. And then we found that 55% of those responding said they check email at least hourly. Most of them leave their email open all day long. No matter what they're working on, it's there. You're guilty,
Guilty
right?
as charged.
Now, some people, that's their job. And if that's their job, if they're in customer service, yes, that's to be expected. But most people in this survey, that's not their job.
Correct.
So you can see why that's a distraction that I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit later. Another startling survey that we found, 1 in 3, 31%, 1 in 3 spent more than 20 minutes a day just hunting for information. In other words, an email comes in and asks them to attach something, send something back, or they need to send a date or whatever, and they spend more than 20 minutes a day just looking for it because they've misfiled it. They have no, that's you again.
Guilty as charged.
They have no system for how to, set up sub-files in their email or even in their word processing package. So when they need to look for a document that they filed just 2 days ago, they can't remember how they filed it.
I can change it from date to who it's from. Does that count?
That won't work, Dennis. You're going to be one of those 1 in 3 who spends all that time. In fact, just an anecdotal thing that I saw on social media not too long ago. Somebody says, can somebody give me a keyword to search? I'm looking for a document that was about how to classify independent workers as opposed to employees. And I know I had it here about a week ago. Can you tell me how to search? And she'd posted it on social media for people to help her find this document. She says, I spent over an hour looking for it. I mean, that's the kind of thing that wastes enormous amounts of time.
And as you say, it's just such a time waster. Unbelievable.
Right.
Yes.
And then the one other little stat that I thought was startling, 47% said they don't use a password manager. And by that, when we all are told to change our passwords over and over, people are saying, you need to change your password, you're going to have somebody hack in, and all these breaches, security breaches, and we need to change them on our accounts to get in. And we have so many different, your credit card account, your bank account, whatever, you need to put it in some kind of password manager like, 1Pass, LastPass, something like that to keep up with it. So you can do that. Almost half of the population does not do that. And so you can imagine the security lapses in major organizations, plus individually at home on your own
Why aren't we not
password.
surprised?
Why
Yes.
are we not surprised that so many people get hacked? And 28%, actually, that's the last stat maybe I'll throw out there, 28%, one in 4 of us or a little better, get hacked. Their email accounts have been hacked. They've been scammed by email.
Well, and I've gotten several over the time. First one I got a few years ago, Diana, it was in the morning, early morning, and I got an email from a friend of mine, and they were in London, and all their stuff had been stolen. Do you remember this email? All the stuff had been stolen, and they wanted me to wire them some money because they didn't have the email, didn't have a credit card. Now, by the way, I was in Paris last year and got all of my stuff stolen. I had €6 and a phone left. I got that, so it does happen. But I mean, I thought it was real, and of course, then I found out that it was a hack, and I've had several of those things.
Yes,
Yeah.
28% get scammed by email. Even though you hear warnings all the time, and people say, don't click on those links in your email.
And the links every
but
time.
People are very sophisticated, and they'll put just a little apostrophe or an extra double letter in the middle of somebody's name, in the address, in the URL, a little extra period there, and you see a name that you recognize, and you don't realize somebody has spoofed that address. And that's how people get scammed all the time.
No question. I've recognized, I think, a lot of that, hopefully most of that, but my biggest problem, I don't know if it is for that viewer, my biggest problem is clutter. I mean, I have so many emails that come in, and I have to tell you, I didn't look last night before I came here, but I think I have 1,362 unopened emails, and then the ones in my inbox, they're 26,400, I think.
Oh,
so help me, would you?
Oh, well, in the book, I start off, I know people are going to say that, so I start off at the very beginning, how to get rid of your clutter with all these strategies.
Tell me.
One of them is just the writer, I hate to tell you this, Dennis, but the writer is creating a lot of that problem. And one of the problems is sending out emails and having people reply back, reply alls.
Yes.
And if you don't tell people, I'm sending this out and I'm asking you to review it or look at it, but only if there's an exception should people have to reply back. So tell them up front, I don't need a response from you. Please do not respond.
I don't need thank you or okay or 10-4.
No, just only reply if you need to correct something here or if something needs to be changed or whatever. So that will stop some of that clutter. Second thing, don't use your email box for a to-do list. A lot of
Guilty as charged.
a lot of people can't make a decision right then, or they need to collect information, or they need to make a call, but they don't want to make a call before they know something else, so they're going to wait till tomorrow. And they open it, they read it, and they leave those in there to remind them to do something. But every time they leave them in there, when they rescan that box for new emails, they see those again. They're cluttered, and they think, oh, what was that again? Oh, what was I waiting on? Now, what was that about? And they have to reread it, so it creates extra work. And then there are the tasks that people use their email for that it was never designed for. For example, think about when we first started using email, that was really the only tool that we used to collaborate with coworkers.
What are you talking about, 20 years ago or so?
Yes.
Or when? Oh, right.
Yes. When we first got email, then that's how we coordinated with our team on projects. That's how we scheduled things. I sent you an email and said, can you meet Friday? And then you had to email back and say, well, no, not Friday, but how about next Tuesday? And then I emailed, it took about 6 emails.
Yeah, telephone tag by email, basically.
Right. But that's not appropriate now. We've got all kind of software that just says, I send you this, you can edit it, say, no, that doesn't work, or you can look at my...
That assumes we understand the software, Diana.
Yes, it takes maybe 15 minutes to learn that package, but then you're going to save an enormous amount of time for eternity to set your schedules.
Thank you.
And the same thing about project management. People, let's say somebody's redesigning your website. Right now I'm having my website redesigned. If every time they were asking me to change something and I have to email it to them and they respond and Nancy inputs something and Deepak inputs something, we're all cluttering up everybody's email. But if we get over on a software package like Trello or Basecamp or Asana or Smartsheets, then we're emailing all in one place over on something else and not using email for it. And all that information is together. So just using the right software tool and not cluttering our inbox. Then in our inbox, we only see what we need.
You're depressing me, Diana. I have to tell you, those 5 things you mentioned, I have heard of Trello. Yes, I have. The others I've never even heard of.
But just pick one. And a lot of them are free, at the fundamental level.
And so businesses are using these in-house, or is it kind of like an intranet? Or
you can use them individually if you're a solopreneur, entrepreneur, or big companies. Most of the time they pay for it, or if you're an independent, then you use it yourself. And there are free subscriptions as well as if you want to upgrade with more features, but many people don't need upgraded features.
Exactly.
And they're many times just intuitive. I work with clients frequently and I am interacting with them and I've never learned it I don't consider myself a techie, but it's very simple. They just send you a link, you go there and input information and answer their questions about a project they're working on.
Is there any risk in using emails? Is there any liability issues in using emails? I mean, I know the one about emailing, it ends up in court because I've read a lot of emails that were products of discovery, but other than that, what are we talking about?
Oh yes, many people don't realize the kind of risk to themselves and to their organization. They think, oh, well, I wouldn't say something dumb that's going to take me to court. But just what I call innocent questions or queries can take you to court if somebody's in a mind to do that, if they have the intention to do that. Law firms have software to search on things that are what we might consider very innocent, like let's discuss that when you and I are alone, or is he going to be on vacation? Let's bring that up when so-and-so is not in the meeting, or be sure to delete this email, or just phrases like, have you mentioned this to anyone else? Things that you might not think that a law firm would search on, but they have just lists and lists of phrases like that. They check on things that would be an innocent question that could be twisted to imply that something sinister was happening. Let's say there was some failure in a product, and we're always having product recalls, and somebody's in the testing phase and they say, is the next step to test this further or to move on to so-and-so? Just an innocent question.
You know, drug companies,
Yes,
as an example.
pharmaceuticals, exactly.
Automobile companies and their defects or something like that.
Right.
Airbags, as an example.
Right.
Yes.
And they're just wanting to know, are we ready to move to the next stage or not? But a lawyer, if there's some problem later, a lawyer could come back and say, this person was warning you that there was a problem. You see, they ask you if we should move to the next stage or not. They were warning you that there was a problem and you didn't react. Or even if you don't respond, they say, why didn't you respond? Were you afraid to raise questions? Were you afraid this might hurt? It was a political situation and you were afraid it might hurt your commission, so you just were silent here? Or if you copy 4 people routinely on a certain document and all of a sudden you didn't copy one person accidentally, and it's, why didn't you copy that person? Did you want to wait till after such a big meeting happened? And all kinds of things that lawyers do with
Let me move to
email.
something more perverse than that. How about sexual harassment in the workplace? Has that ever come in with emails by any chance?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, with the Me Too movement and people being so aware of that, you would think it doesn't happen, but I mean, the newspaper every day, every week is coming up with some kind of situation where this email is the evidence in court.
Okay, so I have these students that come in and they are all high school graduates. Many of them already had some amount of college, a year or 2 or something. And except for my current class, of course, you understand. Let's just say a lot of these students have no earthly idea how to construct a sentence, Diana. And I know you've written a lot of books about this and grammar and all that. So how important is grammar? How important is sentence structure? Because they're all dealing with this phone, they're texting, they're instant messaging and all this stuff. And it seems to me that they just think they can do the same thing if they have to on email, right or wrong?
Very wrong. Grammar is extremely important. In fact, I'll tell you a comment from a CEO. We were doing writing workshops for them. And I thought at that level, they would not be interested in grammar. I was just teaching the structure and how to come up with analyzing the audience and the content, etc. And I asked, shall we cover, and I spent an hour or 2 in this 2-day program on grammar, editing for grammar. And he said, absolutely, these senior vice presidents have some problems. He said, when there's a grammatical error in this big financial institution, big credit card company, he said, it means that if there's a grammar error in a letter that we send out or an email that we send out, it means to them we don't amortize their loan appropriately.
Wow.
He said that's the
So if you're going to make a mistake on
implication.
this, what have you done to the loan when you figured out what the amortization was?
Right.
You obviously overcharged me an interest as
Right.
well, since you can't even write a decent
Right.
email.
And one of the senior vice presidents leaned over and he says, do you mean that we have time to edit and check for a grammar error? You mean if I use affect when I mean effect? And he said, absolutely. To me, it represents an attitude about the job. It's inattention to detail. And he was adamant. That was way back when, and I have run into that attitude about grammar for years. The higher up in the organization, the more concerned they are about perception, about intention.
Well, it's either one of 2 things. Either they don't know any better or else they're sloppy, one of the 2.
Right, and neither one are good.
Today, of course, spell check won't necessarily check affect and effect in many cases,
Right.
but sometimes they will.
Right,
put
they
the
will
right
catch
thing in.
those.
So, but I find some people I know, some students, don't even have spell check on, for heaven's sake. How silly is that?
That's crazy. And the main thing to be aware of, though, is that grammar changes, or misuse of grammar changes the meaning. Court cases, I've got abundance of court cases that revolve around a punctuation mark. You putting in a comma can change the total, reverse the meaning of the sentence. And people just, go through, they throw in a comma like they were breathing. And so grammar is part of it. There are many people who don't even recognize that they're not making a complete sentence. And then the perception about throwing in emojis, that.
Well, what about emojis? Now, my students love emojis. I mean, and they use emojis all the time, obviously, when they're texting. But some of the people would say today we're actually seeing a few uses of emojis in email and business communication. Yes or no?
Yes, 20 years ago, I wrote a book for Simon & Schuster called E-Writing, and back then I said, don't use emojis. The perception was that's totally not acceptable in business writing. Today, it's far more acceptable because we use them in social media posts, and they've slipped over into business writing. But there is a pro and a con. The pro for using emojis in your email is that it makes you seem playful, personal. It adds the personal touch. It conveys things that maybe you think, I can't come up with a word. I can't come up with a phrase with what I'm feeling or thinking, and I don't want to put it in writing. I'd rather just throw the face there and let them put their own meaning. But the negative to that, of course, is that
your meaning and my meaning may
is totally
be different.
What did I mean by that little face there that I put there? It's ambiguous. And for some readers, they consider it insensitive. They consider it too playful or too lighthearted for the topic at hand. You might have meant it in a sarcastic way. You know, humor in general is something that's very subjective.
And that's a good point that you make. How I mean something, even if I'm not using emojis, you have a great sense of humor. I am told that mine is a little strange. I'm told. I'm not sure that person recognizes this. But anyway, how hard is it to put something in a written communication, whether it's a letter or email or emoji or whatever, and to be certain that the person can read it in the, let's just say, the meaning that we were sending?
It's extremely difficult, and that's the reason I recommend if it's any kind of important document, important email, and most emails, they can be appropriate for court. So that's the substance of email today. So read it out loud to yourself. And if you think, I wouldn't say this, don't write it. Write like you talk, minus the grammar errors, minus the rambling, with the appropriate audience analysis, with the appropriate information there. But it should be smooth and flowing. But if it sounds stuffy to your ear, it will sound stuffy on the page. And if you need a prop, Dennis, here's what I say: pick up the phone and hold it, and just read it out loud to yourself. And if you think, I would never be saying this on the phone,
but in
don't
fact,
write it that
often
way.
they should pick up the phone instead of writing an email, shouldn't they? That's another thing these days.
That's true, and I have a whole section talking about that in the book: when to phone, when to write, when to use the email, because there's some thought should go into that.
One of the challenges I have with my students is the subject line. They seem to think, and they wrote a thing lately that I read just this week, grading one of my students' papers, and the subject line didn't say was totally worthless. It didn't mean anything compared to what was in the email. How important is the subject line?
It's extremely important because many people decide whether to read now, delete, throw it away, forward it, based on the subject line. And you will get subject lines that say things like, oops, or I forgot, or last minute details, following up, and you're thinking, following up to what? Oops, about what? Last minute details. Are you asking or sending?
That's why the subject line is important to me, because if I can get to who it was from, I look down the subject line. But if the subject lines are terrible, then I'm in trouble. And here's the other thing. So how are you supposed to do this? Let's say that you and I have emailed back and forth 3 or 4 times. The first time we emailed, you said, Dennis, I want to know what time to be at the studio for this. The last time I emailed you, it's what time you and your husband and I are going to eat dinner afterwards. Should we change the subject line if the topic changes?
Absolutely. That is another key problem with productivity. And you know, the whole book is about productivity. And it's just a huge issue in big companies like IBM or Lockheed, when they've got these long emails and they're copying other people on different parts. That is what is a huge productivity problem, because they start off talking about this project and these 2 people are talking, and then all of a sudden they copy in Mary, and then they copy in Raul, and then they copy in George, and down here you've got some confidential information that you didn't want this person to see, but now this person is seeing it. And they keep the same subject line, and then all of that needs to be saved to your CRM, your customer relationship management system. And so now then you're 20 emails later, you change the subject totally. You've got to click on each one of those emails, open every one of them up to find out that one key detail, like when are we going to dinner after the client meeting, and when was the proposal due, and when did they add that? If you've got 3 things, when did they add the amendment to it? You've got to open up 30 emails to find that information. So every time the subject changes, you need, on that long thread, you need to change
the subject line.
subject line.
Okay, now look, Diana, this is all great. I mean, I love it. I truly love it. But how am I going to find the time to do this? I'm too busy screwing around with my emails.
You know, if you would just spend, no kidding, if you would just spend 3 to 4 hours one time and reorganize, learn the strategies and reorganize how you set up your subfolders and how you set up the rules and the filters on your email and how you're going to keep your documents, you would be set.
Is that in your book?
It is. There is
And
a
when
section
will it
on how
be
to do it.
published? I hope soon.
It's going to be, you can order it now. It's already on all the online bookstores, so you can order it now, but it will be out officially in June.
All right,
18.
last question. You talk in there about reputation risk. Talk to us about reputation risk and doing emails wrong.
I think part of the reputation comes when you are sending it out for sending email, too many of them, and when you send them out for frivolous reasons, like you're trying to pat yourself on the back. You send out an email saying, team, I would like to congratulate you. We've done a great job. And then you include in there your boss and 2 other bosses and great comments from your client about you. And it seems to be you're congratulating everybody else, but you're really passing on these comments about yourself and your own work.
Yes.
Or when you're trying to put pressure on other people to do something like, you know, you're soliciting funds for something, and you say, here's a list of the people that contributed so far. If you want to contribute and you haven't done so, please
You're
let me know.
shaming them into it.
Shaming people into doing such and such.
Here's the shame. You know something? All this great stuff, we could have done 14 emails, but we're out of time. I really appreciate your giving us this, and I know that viewer is very happy with it. I know I'm happy with it. You know, as you just have heard so many great ideas. Now, here's the problem I'm going to have and you're going to have. How do we implement them? And just to see how you're doing on that, why not email Niki McCuistion at the address on the credits and tell her what you thought of this program. Also, follow us on Twitter. Yes, I know. Check McCuistionTV.com and keep watching, as we always talk about things that matter with people like Diana, who really cares.
For more information, call 214-750-5157 or email Niki N at NikiMcCuistion.com. Visit our website at www.McCuistionTV.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at www.twitter.com/McCuistionTV or download McCuistion TV video podcast on iTunes.